Thank you so much for joining us for today's special masterclass on building wealth and strategic investing for professional athletes. I'm Danielle Patterson, CEO of Family Office List, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. I'm very excited. We have two incredible leaders with us, Julia Valentine, CEO of Family Office Alpha, who will share her expertise in managing multi-billion-dollar assets and integrating cutting-edge technology into wealth management. And we've got Garrick Jones, former NFL and CFL star turned CEO of 73 Holdings LLC. They have very impressive, extensive backgrounds. I'll make sure that you guys saw that in the Zoom registration. But today we're going to offer Garrick's going to offer his unique perspective on how athletes can successfully navigate wealth creation, goal setting, and even team ownership. So it's going to be an amazing conversation. It will be between all three of us, but we really love to make these events live so that we can speak to all of you. So in making that an engaging experience, feel free. I've enabled the chat. You guys are welcome to introduce yourselves to each other, do a little networking. And I ask that if anyone has, burning questions for Garrick or Julia, please feel free, use the Q&A. That way they won't get buried and lost in the networking. So drop those in the Q&A. As I said, it will be a conversation today, and we'd love to include you in it. So a few housekeeping notes before we dive right in. This will be recorded, and tomorrow I will be sure to follow up. We hope you can stay to the end, but again, we'll send that recording. We'll also include information how you can get hold of Julia and Garrick. If we don't get to all the questions that you drop, we'll make sure that we're able to follow up after. So that's really all I have in terms of housekeeping and introductions. So we'll go ahead and get started. Julia, Garrick, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess just to get the conversation started, I'd love to start with you, Garrick. Why would you say it's so difficult for professional athletes to focus on wealth creation during their careers?
I would say because 9 times out of 10, if you are active and you're playing, you're trying to keep a job. So, with me, I've always been an entrepreneur my entire life. So I always had things going on while I was playing. And I was blessed enough with the ability to play at a high level and be paid at a high level, but I always had things going on. You always hear inside of, I guess, the belly of that beast, they want the players just to focus on the game. But I knew that it was life after, right? So for a lot of athletes, because you are trying to keep a job and there's really not a lot of job security, the X's and O's is what you focus on. So you don't really get a chance to get into other things. There's a lot of time constraints, itineraries. I mean, it's real regimented.
I can only imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really regimented. A lot of people
tunnel
don't
vision.
get, a lot of people don't really get how regimented it is. But when it comes down to athletes and having gone through that, with a natural progression, as you get older, that's a part of your psyche. That's a part of your DNA. So that's why when you bring athletes into the fold for businesses, once they learn what their job is, now their competitive nature comes out. And we kind of talked about that a little bit offline. That competitive nature is something we're born with, but companies send their employees to these seminars and webinars and anything you can think of in order to learn how to be competitive when we're born with it. So yeah, that's the deal. It's no job security. They're always bringing somebody in to replace you. So you kind of got to have that in the back of your mind. But yeah, that's a lot of what goes on inside of professional sports. It's what have you done for me lately,
Yeah. Oh yeah. High intensity. No room really to think about anything other than that immediate, how can I be the best I can be?
That is
Wow.
it.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that's got to be a challenging environment. What are some of the unique challenges in that, situation that athletes face?
Oh man. I mean, just trying to navigate everyday life,
Yeah.
that a lot of people go through. Everybody really goes through it, but to have that be a part of your everyday scenario, and then also I think the wherewithal and what's being asked of you. The amount of time, time management is really crucial for
Yeah.
professional athletes. And a lot of times you hear about a lot of athletes really not necessarily taking advantage of the time that they have, when they're away from their sport because you're so regimented. Like I say, you have certain things that you do NFL
Yeah,
wise, right? You probably maybe get a month or 2 months off after the
right.
season, and then you're kind of right back into that fold. So,
Oof.
guys tend to, when you're young, you tend to try to cut loose and make up for lost time, so to speak. But yeah, no. It's one of those deals where it's demanding, and then you're
Yeah,
working on families. You have all these different aspects that go along with it, and you're kind of in this bubble, in
yeah,
this microscopic bubble where everybody's kind of really made public of what you're doing and what goes on. So it's pretty hard navigating it. I think from a mental health standpoint,
yeah,
when you really get down to it, a lot of these things need to be incorporated in teams.
yeah.
When it comes down to that, you need to be able to have that plan set up for your athletes because we go through a lot, go through a ton. So, but
Have
that's
support
nobody
structure.
really cares about your problems a lot of times because everybody has problems. But yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
think everything's really amplified with your athletes.
Gosh, wow. I mean, for those of us that aren't athletes on your level, can you paint a picture like what in a day, in a week what would your day look like? I mean, is it just how many hours are you training?
Oh man. I'll put it to you like this. In the NFL, when I was playing and I was active, your week would pretty much be set, right? You know exactly where you were going to be at certain times. Um, my coaches, they were kind of the old school kind of coaches. So we were pretty much locked in from 8 a.m. Well, I'll say 5 a.m. until around 5:30 p.m. every day. Until we got to like Thursday, Friday, and then it kind of tailed off a little bit, and you were going home by 2:30, right? So you have your training, you have everything you got to get done before you get in there to go to practice. You're gonna have your meetings during the day. You'll probably have some weight sessions and things of that nature. Then you're probably gonna sign some balls and do some kind of community service situation, and then you're gonna go back to meetings after lunch, and then you're gonna
Garrick mentioned that he might pop
More,
in and
yes.
out, but he'll be
two,
back. There you
two and a half,
are.
maybe
We
two
hear
and a
you.
half,
You're
maybe
with us.
3 hours, and
Yeah.
then after that, then you're kind of working your way back to to
Mm.
going home. So it's like Groundhog's Day. Every day it's the same thing.
Mm.
And you just get used to it.
Unreal.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, in keeping that structure and knowing where you're supposed to be, and I mean, just the organization and time management. I mean, it's all these things that people don't necessarily put together with athletes, but yeah, it's fascinating to really get in that mindset. So, thinking about the mindset and the psychology. I mean, there's so much more there that I am really just amazed by. But when it comes to the psychology of money, do you see family financial patterns playing a big role in how athletes manage wealth?
absolutely. Just to kind of give you a
Garrick's going to be back. We
oh
apologize.
yeah, I'm
There you
back,
are.
guys. I'm back.
Yeah.
So
Start from the top.
yeah, so where I'm from, we learned how to work hard. We didn't necessarily have a lot of opportunities outside of working for somebody else.
Mhm.
In which at the end of the day, for us, it was about just going to work and coming home. So it was that Groundhog Day mentality. But
Totally.
once you're exposed to certain things, and then you get the opportunity to be around it, like family offices and structuring how your legacy will be laid out, it tends to turn into, okay, now I see how this works, and now you can apply everything that you learn, from that standpoint. But I think it's just that exposure, and then once you get exposed to it, it's the education of it, and
Yeah.
then being able to have the implementation after that. So that's this mentor-mentee relationships that needs to be built, because a
Mhm.
lot of us don't come from that vantage point.
Yeah.
Mm.
I imagine it's a mindset, right? And
Absolutely.
just retraining and educating and yeah. So getting exposure, like you said, to family offices. So, that's wonderful that these athletes now are getting educated on that and learning what family offices are and how they can, take those steps. But so it's new. It's a completely new mindset, a completely new concept. So for these athletes that are, considering this, what would you say are the first steps? And, if they want to have long-term success, is there, a roadmap? How do they go about it?
That's what we're creating. I think that's
Mhm.
what we're putting together with the Ownership Reimagined movement. We wanted to be able to create a safe space for athletes to be able to come into this space and come into this world and learn.
Yeah.
Like I said, that mentor-mentee relationship, and from the alliances that I've formed, throughout my career, being able to be a conduit and bring them into these spaces and be able to work with groups like Family Office Alpha, and we'll kind of talk about what we're doing together in reference to our partnerships to be able to really set these athletes apart and set them up for life. Because you'll be a retired player far longer than you'll be a current player. But for a lot of these youngsters, they don't get that just yet. But as they get the opportunity to go further in their careers, we want them to be able to be exposed to, setting up trust and being able to be the bank, so to speak, and setting up a legacy that's going to be able to go 8, 9 generations deep.
Wow.
And that's the partnerships that we wanted to be able to put together and bring the right people with the right mindsets doing the right things together. So
That's amazing. What an awesome niche and what an amazing way to give. You just think of all the wonderful mentors in our own lives, and without them, you learn the hard way. You maybe don't even learn. You don't know the opportunity, the possibilities. And
yeah.
so having those mentors, having those collaborations, and I'd love to hear more. I know that you and Julia have an exciting new collaboration. Can you guys share a little bit about that and how you're working together?
Julie, you wanna let them
Yeah,
know?
thank you. Yeah, no, I would love to. I'd love to talk a little bit about it. I think that reflecting on everything that Garrick said about how, everybody has a life, a family, and for athletes who have a practice, and even for athletes who retired and they're probably now trying to figure out, like, what do I do, right? Like day to day. So everybody is busy, and just pushing education alone. Education is great. I love education. I have 2 degrees in finance from some of the really, really amazing finance programs. And I have to tell you that the theory of finance and the practical things that I learned when I worked for a family office, they're
Mm.
just completely different things for some reason. And theory gives you the critical thinking skills and the ability to fact check and step back. Like when somebody tells you something, you're like, I don't know. Like everything about my education is like my bells and, are going off right now. Like this could not be that easy, or this could not be that way, or whatever. So it's a great, kind of way to check on something and to understand it in depth when you need to.
Yeah.
But there is a huge chasm between theory and practice. And also, when you're doing something successfully, and especially if your goal is to set up your family for the next, however many generations, I think Garrick, you said 9, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Like it takes a system, right? Like it's just like there are all of the things that need to be done. There's a long laundry list, and they all need to be synchronized and done correctly in the right order, and all of that stuff. So if you have to figure out the system itself and you're not really coming from having learned that blueprint, it's going to take you a really long time, right? And some of us have been lucky enough that we worked for the best of the best, and we're like, okay, these are the best practices. Like now we just have to take this blueprint and bring it to everyone else. And so I think it's from that mindset that we really started this partnership, and we were very lucky that this happened. And we're looking forward to a super exciting next year where we're going to be rolling out a lot of the academy, where we're going to be touching upon this information, but also creating a system where we're teaching the system, like we bring in the system,
I
which is
love
what a
that.
family office is. Like a family office is a vehicle for systematically creating wealth and protecting wealth.
Yeah. I mean, as we learned in, our recent conversations about the necessity of, cybersecurity and technology, I mean, there's just so much. You can't even imagine the depth of everything that must go in. But if you can build that system, you can build that roadmap, it ensures that, these athletes who were trained to be, top of their game have all the things that, no one could possibly know unless they tried it on their own and made the mistakes. You're saving time, you're, providing a tremendous resource.
Yeah, and once I was reading back, there's history around family offices, and then, it goes back to Medici's, and it goes back for centuries. So this
Mhm.
is like not a new, this is far from being new, right? It's just now more people have access to it. It's more
Right.
professionalized in the sense that like we can learn it, can go do it and repeat it over and over again.
Mhm.
But this has been like the history itself is, if you ever look it up, right, this is not a new invention, and
Yeah.
so it's tried and true, and I like things where you don't reinvent the wheel. Like you can perfect the wheel a little bit, but even that, like who perfect, you know what I mean, like you just do it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. I love that. Tremendous. So before I'm excited to talk about, I've got a lot of topics I really want to pick both of your brains on, but we have a lot of questions building up in the Q&A. So I thought we'd kind of
Good.
turn things to what the audience really wants to know. So we'll do a couple of those really quick before I move on. But actually an anonymous attendee, self-control and growth. Are there tricks and tips from the athletic industry which could benefit finance managers? It's a great question.
Oh, that's a really good question. I would liken this statement to be more of a training camp mentality.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't know what that means unless you've gone through camp. Essentially, when teams come to camp, they may bring maybe 105 guys to camp, but by the start of the season, they have to get down to 53 men.
Oh, wow.
So he wasn't kidding when he said competitive.
I
Yeah.
know. God.
So as things go, right, it's very dog eat dog, right? So
Wow.
as you go through camp, you may have a room of guys that you get a chance to know, but that number gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's your job to outdo them, to be
Yeah.
mentally tough, to know the tricks of the trade,
Yeah.
to study all these different things, and be physically fit enough to out outlast them. So you're in a sense sending guys home, and when
Wow.
they go home, now they got to explain why they don't have a job.
Yeah.
So when it's about
Not
the
going to be
competitive
me.
aspect, yeah, when it's about the competitive aspect of it, you have to be that. You have to have a training camp mentality. You have to
Mhm.
do the work. None of this is easy, and the work it'll expose you. So
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I bring into this space now, when it comes down to managing funds and everything that we're doing in the sports space, and also the ownership scenario. We're going to change the DNA of professional sports, but we're going to utilize what we learned out there on the field or on the pitch or on the court in order to change the dynamic of it. So that's how I would describe it in reference to the finance world and everything else. You gotta have that edge. There's a
Yeah.
reason why there's a reason why they paid me like they
Oh,
paid me, right?
oh, yeah.
And it's that elite attitude and understanding that you're the best of the best.
Wow. Well, that actually leads really well into another question asked by Tim. He wants to know if you provide money mindset education for the athletes you work with.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Oh, he cut on out, but yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome. It's like both ways on the field to get trained and in the world of finance.
right. You guys got to excuse me, man. We're having technical difficulties, but
Yeah.
that's what we teach. That's what we teach. And I get to be the sacrificial lamb, if you will, because I'm
Yeah,
cut from that cloth. I've gone through it, been through the fire, so I get the chance to be the North Star when
yeah,
it comes down to it. And that's the thing. It's a mindset shift, and not only for the athletes, but the people around them. Right. So once you teach them, now they can go out and they can teach others.
yeah,
So it's a holistic approach. It's organic. It's one of those things where it's practical, and we get a chance to implement the change that we want to see. So
yeah,
that's a must. That's first and foremost in the priority list.
yeah. Awesome. Well, there's a lot of questions still in there, but I'm going to just kind of jump back to this idea of team ownership. I know you Actually, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead of what I want to talk
No,
about.
it's
Oh,
So
okay.
stick with it.
yeah,
That's such a great question.
no,
Yeah.
it does. I mean, well, we might as well talk about it now. I mean,
Yeah.
so I know it's becoming really popular amongst athletes, and why do you think that this trend is growing, and what's really involved when it, I mean, I'm sure it's, again, so much more than what we realize. So can you talk a little bit about what's involved and why you see it as a growing trend?
Well, I'll go back to what Julia said earlier. It's more information that's available now, right? You didn't necessarily have that thought process, back in the days.
Mhm.
You thought that, I think from when you're young, you see these guys on the field, or you see the young ladies playing basketball now even more so than ever. And we'll kind
Yeah.
of get into the WNBA aspect of what's going on, but you see it as a child, and in that, you think that that's the final level. You think that that's the mountaintop, but when really it's the check writers, it's the owners that you want to be in that position. And for me, when I played, I looked up in the owners' suites and I didn't see anybody that looked like me. Right.
Mhm.
I grew up maybe a mile away from where Jerry Jones grew up. So knew all about him, graduated from
Yeah.
the same high school, the whole 9 yards, have our relationship when it comes down. He wanted me to go to Arkansas. I went to Arkansas State. I wanted me to come play for the Cowboys, but other teams were willing to pay. So it's a
Yeah.
business decision, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
so at that, you get a chance to see that from that dynamic. But for me, once I got there, I was like, well, we're getting paid well, but somebody's cutting us a check. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, we're still working for somebody, right? And then when I got a chance to start looking at it more deeper from a private side of things, I saw that the athletes are grossly underpaid because there's a salary cap. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, okay. So I started, putting two and two together, and I said, okay, I understand it now. So for a lot of people, they don't look at it like that. They just say, hey, this is how I'm going to get my family out of this position that they're in, and that's the deal, right? So it's almost a lottery lifestyle. You focus on this so long, and once you get it, you don't know anything but that. So you've kind of
Yes.
been pushed through a system, all these different things, right? Anything you can think of, but now you're expected to be a grown up. You're expected to understand finances, all these different things. When, like I said, to go back to what I was saying, you never really have been exposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
So man, it's a good time for where we are. There's a
Yeah.
lot of information out there, and then you got a lot more individuals around these athletes who are really looking at things with a bigger picture, a bigger lens, if so to speak.
Wow.
And
Well,
let me add something also to it.
yeah, please do.
I think it's also the leadership. It's
Mm.
Mhm.
also Garrick, you standing up and saying like, "Hey, I just figured this out." You know what like? I think
Right.
that there's now more of that awareness and willingness of people like you to actually say it, right?
Absolutely.
And I think
Yeah.
that like that is, I don't know if that's relatively new or you're just like very articulate about it. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's definitely, I can see that more now.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what
Cool.
it is. It's
Yeah.
like I said, being that North Star, right? Being cut from
Yes.
the same cloth as all these individuals. They come from these areas. I mean, I am that, right? So I tend to a lot of times say I'm a three-headed monster.
Mhm.
I come from some real bad times, so I'm good in those situations in those neighborhoods. But I also played at the highest level and got paid at the highest level.
Right.
And then you turn around and I'm sitting in boardrooms with billionaires. So I'm
Wow.
I'm I'm three-dimensional when I can't take them to my part of town and they be okay, right?
Right.
And then I really
Mhm.
can't put them on the field as well either, and they
Yeah.
make it.
Mhm.
So they're one-dimensional when I'm three. So it's really
Wow.
when you sit down and you look at it and say, well, okay, I get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's
What a
possible.
unique
Yeah.
perspective. You've been through it. You see it from all three sides. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, amazing that you're shining the light. You're helping someone who hasn't been through it, who doesn't see it in that way. That's incredible leadership.
yeah.
Interesting because you talked about, some of the highs and the lows. And one of our attendees, Melissa, asks, how do you see a failure and growth as part of the process in investing? Well, do you see like the process of failure and growth in investing the same as it is in sports? And do you notice different levels of resilience in former athletes? It's like very interesting.
Uh, yeah, no, 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 no. I always like to say I'm one no away from the yes that's going to change the world.
Hmm.
So when it comes down to no's, you want to get those out the way as quickly as possible. So a lot of times I need you to tell me no, right? So that way I can take that and I can really look at what's going on and change the dynamic of it. Um, Athletes, really don't know how to lose, to be honest with you, because there's not a failure, there's not a loss, right? That's research in order to
Yeah.
go back and turn it into something else. So I think a lot of people get turned
Mhm.
off by what they feel like is failures or those no's,
Mm.
when really that's the best thing for you because it teaches you resiliency, it teaches you mental toughness, right?
Mhm.
My thing is you will not outwork me, and if you do, you deserve the win.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you deserve to watch.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the situation, right? So I would say that being an athlete, like I said, we're born with this competitive nature, but everybody has it. Everybody
Yeah.
has it, and everybody can tap into it. Once you tap into it, then you know how to continue on your journey. But when you're trying to raise capital, whatever the deal may be, your nose and those things are you need that. That's part of the fuel,
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating. Julia, do you have anything to add or can I move on to a question?
Move
Yeah.
on.
Okay, awesome. Well, this is also, it's so cool drawing the parallels between the world of athletes and the world
Yeah.
of wealth management. So another anonymous attendee asks, so team building insights when you're thinking about it from the world of athletes, and is that, a perspective that can be transferable to the wealth management industry, specifically like in and around team building?
Absolutely. You want to be able to associate things that have happened and be able to paint that picture. So that way, anybody that you're representing or you're thinking about representing.
He'll be back, don't you worry. It's like a cliffhanger.
Yeah, yeah. They can see that you've been through some things,
Yeah,
and they know that you have the right intentions in mind when it
yeah.
comes down to it. So that helps you be personable, that helps
Mhm.
you be relatable, and being able to draw on your experiences. I lead with a lot of what I've gone through that most people would consider bad, but for me, I'm like, this is a part of my DNA. This is a part of my lesson plan. This is a part
Yeah,
of if you eat gumbo, this is a part of your seasoning for your gumbo. Because if you hadn't
yeah,
been through anything, your gumbo would be pretty bland. So I just try
yeah.
to look at it like that in that light.
It's kind of like you earn the trust and you earn the
Absolutely.
leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I need to know you've been through some things before I'm your client.
Exactly,
That's
exactly.
that's so funny because I just realized that we have basically a sentence about our management team at Family Office Alpha, and it basically says we've been through this crisis, that crisis, this,
There
that.
you go.
It's like
Absolutely.
exactly.
There, you
Yeah,
have the
that's
battle
like now
wounds.
I'm laughing now because like I'm just realizing why, that's it. And we didn't put anything else. It's like that's
Yeah,
if you, yeah, it's so painful to go through all of these events, but if you haven't, then really your ability to figure things out is very limited.
Very
yeah.
limited.
Very
Mhm.
Yeah.
well, Julia, this is a great way to kind of segue to you and really talk about your expertise in cybersecurity. And, is this something that athletes should really be paying attention to? And, is there, I know there's such a critical issue around it right now when we talked about the numbers of family offices affected by it. But yeah, can you speak to that and how athletes maybe can protect their personal and financial data?
Yeah, absolutely. This is it's one of the things that we always worry about because the more you're out there, the more people can see your image, likeness,
Mm,
and all that, the more um there's an opportunity for all of the deep fakes and all of these other things that are coming in spade, right? In terms of cybersecurity threats.
yeah,
Um, it's one thing when you're not a public person, and honestly, if you don't want to have a social media account, you just won't,
yeah,
right? That
Right.
you can afford not to have it. Now, if you're playing for a large team, like you don't have that option, right? Like everything about you is out there. if they really want to take you and take your voice and, you know, and have it say something else or give a verbal authorization for moving money, I mean, your voice is out there, right?
Whether
Your
you
image
like,
is out there. So yeah, so there are unique challenges associated with that. And so there are all sorts of tools now that people in the cyber arena have been coming up with to fight it, right?
Mhm.
But just like with anything else, awareness, being aware of it is primary,
That,
right?
and again, it kind of
Knowing,
goes back
like,
to education and having, you know,
yeah.
people here to really point out what's possible without us needing to find out the hard way.
100%. Yeah. And it just shows you that you know, how is like, why are we even mentioning this? Like, this is how multidimensional your family office is gonna be. Like, you're gonna worry about this stuff, right?
Right.
Because you're gonna worry about it not just for yourself, but also for your kids. And your kids, believe me, they really want to be out there. Like, they want to create all of these accounts and talk about the family and the latest thing that you attended and where you're gonna go next time. And like, these are
Right.
all of the things that you were like, this is precisely what we don't want out there. You
I
know
think
what I mean?
it's interesting. It's that next generation. It's just a different mindset, you know, brought up in a digital, yeah.
Of course, but they are also not aware of the downside, right? Like, so how do you create like these conversations, right? And maybe we talk about sometimes, you know, family governance, and the part of that governance could be like there are certain things that do not make it out
Right.
into the social uh
Right.
Right.
media.
Right.
Like, there's something you just don't, you're not allowed to say it, you're not allowed to post that. And like, what is that? Like, where do you draw the line? Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Because
Right.
and we do things like that. Like, we have conversations about the virtual kidnappings and all of this stuff, and it's scary. Um, and a lot of family offices are like, oh my God, now we have to really, you know, think through all of these things. And so that's not gonna go away, unfortunately. It's
No,
just,
no.
yeah,
If,
that's
if
part of our,
anything, do you feel it's probably just a growing concern, if anything? And
it's a growing concern. And so it's also the reason that I wanted to bring it up is to show that, you know, once you create your family office, you're going to be worried about your downside protection in many different arenas as much as growing wealth,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, glad we have both of your guidance to think about those things that you
Yeah.
could never imagine. Um, this is interesting. So earlier, Garrick, you mentioned, you know, that in sports there is no failure. You know, you go home,
Right.
you fail. So
Right. Right.
Gwen, one of our attendees, mentions that, you know, she looks at fail as first attempt in learning. With this being the attitude, is there a guideline to follow for going into ownership?
Um, I think it's a level of respect for that level.
Hmm.
Everybody has a first day of school. I don't care who you are, right? You have to
Hmm.
go in and you have to learn, you know, the rules, the regulations, and it's that training camp mentality that I go back to. Once you start to really figure out what's what and what can happen and how you can make your mark or leave your mark rather, now it's one of those things where now, okay, this is the determination, this is what this is, and so on and so forth. So I think when it comes down to rules, rules are made to be respected.
Hmm.
But at the same time, you know, it's about innovation as well.
Hmm.
You know, I liken, you know, where we are right now with the ownership aspect of what's going on to the first part of what I like to call my movie. The way I made it to the NFL, you know, from the trunk of my car, without a senior season of college ball, you know, chasing scouts from Little Rock to LA, from LA back to Mobile, Alabama, living in the car, you know, those types of things, right? Less than 1% of all athletes make it to the NFL, and I did it from the trunk of my car, right?
Wow.
So odds mean nothing to me, period,
Hmm.
right? Odds
Hmm.
mean absolutely nothing to me. So this is just a continuation when it comes down to it. But it's about learning as much as possible. I'm a student of
Yeah.
ownership now, right? Where
Yeah.
I know, you know, all the different owners, you know, where they cut their teeth, where their money was made, how they got their organizations, all these different things. Because I take it and I apply it to everything that I've done, and
Hmm.
now the way we're going to change the DNA of professional sports. I know being an athlete coming through, some of the things I wish I would have had when I was playing. And now from an ownership standpoint, we'll be able to implement those things and set these athletes up and pretty much set up a true succession plan, right? You don't ever hear about athletes having a succession plan, but these teams do because they pass them down from generation to generation.
Mhm.
And it's always the next man or woman up because you have a crop every year that comes in. So it's always, next man up is a new bell of the ball. But for us, when you come and you're a part of my organization or a
Mhm.
team that I own, you won't just come and collect a check. You will be set up as a family office by the time you're done. You will be entrenched in the community. You'll be set up, with the foundational pieces you need to leave a legacy. And that makes it a lot easier for these athletes to run through those brick walls that they ask us to do because they
Wow.
know they're taken care of. So it's about changing the DNA and innovation.
Garrick, I want to come play for you. I mean, that's
Come on,
amazing.
come, let's go.
Not the immediate right now. Yeah, I'm ready. But
Let's go. Let's
that's
go.
amazing, like truly setting them up for success and their kids and all the generations to come. I love that that's your outlook and you can really,
Absolutely.
and I'm sure that, the more you give, the more you get. And I'm sure when you give to them
Absolutely.
in that way, they're going to show up and give more to you. And it's just a great way to be.
Absolutely. And think about it, to just segue off what you said, it's not just about the athletes, it's about their
Yeah.
families and also the fans, right? We want the fans
Yeah.
to have a bigger voice because without the fans, you have nothing.
Yeah.
You got a great idea. Without the players, you have nothing. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, fans and players are looked at as commodities. So we want to change that dynamic. We want to bring it into a family dynamic and create that ecosystem where everybody wins.
Yeah.
And everybody wins big because if you take care of your athletes and your fans and they have more of a voice, you're going to make more money as an owner as well. So
Mhm.
I love it. I love that collaboration between the team, the owners, and the
Mhm.
fans. It's the true ecosystem where when they all work together in collaboration, it's when you get, the win-win. Um, Garrick, I think you can still hear us. So one of
mhm.
our attendees, Marlia, she says that she's heard athletes discuss how to leverage their sweat equity, but with less rigor and discipline on the other equity. If we need to get clarification, we can. But she says, how do you advise them on these aspects?
Um, what I believe she means is I think the capital,
Mm,
first money in a lot of times.
yeah,
Uh, I think being able to rely on your social capital in order to
yeah,
get things done is a
Mhm.
part of the sweat, energy, and effort that all the athletes are putting into this thing. Because everybody hadn't done that, and it's the same thing with your finance managers and everybody else, your doctors, your lawyers. There's a set of skills that you've obtained and an amount of work that you put in
oh
that if
yeah,
it were easy to do, everybody would do it. I think with your athletes to be able to, leverage what we've done in order to get to another level, that comes with it. It has to come with it. I've been around people who had the wrong mindset and said, "Hey, you're done playing football, so you shouldn't even talk about it." And I'm like, "Well, if I were a doctor and I put this amount of time into this, I'm going to go be a doctor, right?" So,
yeah,
and that's being around the wrong people with the wrong mindsets, right? So I think it's just it's one of those things where you want your athletes to learn how to leverage that. That's what I talk about a lot with a lot of the older athletes, the alumni. Being a part of the NFLPA here in Houston as VP for a number of years, that was what I was really teaching those guys. Like, listen, you have time now where you can really get out in the community and leverage what you've done and parlay
yeah,
that into revenue.
Mhm.
yeah.
So once you change that mindset, you can really change the world and the narrative as well.
I'm shocked that they would say not to talk about it. That's who you
Oh
are. It's
yeah,
going into
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
fabric. And again, I love that you're not just going to accept that. You're going to change the narrative. That's tremendously
Absolutely,
good. Yeah,
100%.
awesome. So Jim would love us to take a step back in the conversation where Julia and Garrick, you guys were talking about your partnership, and they really Jim would like to know a bit more about like what it's designed to do, the collaboration between the two of you. And
Mhm.
I'm fortunate to know, and to have heard, previously how you guys work together. But yeah, and again, we're talking about teamwork. We're talking about the fans and the team and how we work stronger together.
Mhm.
So you each have such unique strengths and skill sets. So can you elaborate on kind of, yeah, what this partnership is going to bring to the table, what it's designed to do?
I can
You want to
start,
give?
Garrick.
Yeah,
You
you can
can
start
start.
it. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that we've already touched upon it when Garrick said by the time athletes go through, you know, even at the beginning of their careers or while they're actively playing, by the time they're done, we want them to be set up as a family office and a complete set of tools and the right mindset for already having their family office and
Mhm.
running that family office very effectively and understanding the full power of having it and what did they want to get out of it for themselves and then as Gary said for their families for the next generations. So it's exactly how any family with a large operating business that sooner or later starts setting up a family office, that's exactly how they think. And
Yeah.
believe me, the parallels to an operating a business, a lot of families had a huge operating business and they might not have it anymore. You know, sometimes they still maintain it for centuries and sometimes they don't.
Mhm.
Or one operating business goes away and another one comes in. Um, you know, you see a lot of families that started out in oil and gas, and they could be adding clean tech, you know, to their
Yeah.
portfolios these days, right? And just saying
Right,
like,
right.
you know, and it doesn't mean that you don't like what, you know, your ancestors built and how the wealth was built, right?
Right.
I'm not bringing emotion into it. I'm just saying there are
Yeah.
practical reasons, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
environment changes.
Absolutely.
So for us, the ability to bring the academy, right, that basically in practical terms goes into, you know, here's what's going on. The
That's
ability to second what Garrett just said about mindset
awesome.
and the fact that there is risk and you're not gonna, you know, not every investment is gonna become a unicorn. But what
Right.
you're gonna learn from that, you're not gonna make that same mistake twice. That's it. That's
Right.
all we ask.
I
Okay.
love
It's
that.
not that you can never make a mistake. Because that's
Right.
like,
Right.
that's it. You're done. Okay. You're never
Yeah.
gonna get
Yeah.
anywhere, right? If that's right. But let's not that you know that same one for the second, third, fourth time, that's out of the question. So it's and also you know, as you're doing all of these things and you have questions, right? You need to have your team that's going to tell you like, here's what you were thinking
Mhm.
about, and here's how to phrase it, and here's the technical term for it, and finance or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like anything
Yeah.
in that arena, or here's you know, a person who bought that commercial real estate portfolio or did this venture fund or is doing team ownership, you know what I mean? Like we have everybody in our ecosystem
Yeah.
already. Like there are very few things that you need to discover. You'll discover them for yourself, but not for the universe as such. So
But
you know,
what an awesome
someone figured
concept.
this
The
out already.
Academy. It's like
Yeah,
the hack. Yeah. I love it. Do you
yeah.
have
So
anything to add, Garrick? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can just listen to Julia go on, man.
I
And that's
know.
why I think I love the passion behind it.
Totally.
You know, and the purpose, even more so the purpose behind it, you know, and
mhm.
that's, you know, anytime I look to partner with anybody, you know, it has to be a passion there, it has to be a purpose there. And that's bigger than us.
Yeah.
So, you know, when it comes down to these athletes, what they'll receive is that they're going to receive accountability
Yeah.
because it's up to them to change the dynamic of their DNA, of their lineage. It's on them. It's on them, right? And the things that I've done, you know, like I said, I use that as a North Star. So you
Yeah.
won't be able to blow smoke up my shorts. Like, come on, I know the workload of everybody in the building.
Yeah.
But it's transformational. It's not transactional.
Mhm.
Um, there will be investment opportunities in it,
Mhm.
but these will be right beside us in a mentor-mentee fashion. So that way you're not walking alone. Just to kind of go back to what Julia said, you're not learning these things. I mean, I had to do it myself. I didn't know
Yeah.
what a family office was until I was like 35,
Yeah.
right? And I was
Yeah.
done with the league, and I was like, "What is that?" And I had a conversation with a great friend of mine, Jason O'Bradley. You know, we've been working and doing things for so long, but we had a conversation and I brought up family office and he was like, "What is that?"
Yeah,
And it hit me at that point. I said, "You know what? Okay, this okay, we're doing the right thing
right.
because now we get a chance to not be 35 and now they're getting it at 25. Like my
Mhm.
kids know what family offices are.
Yes.
So when it comes down to it, they understand the dynamic of what their father is setting up for them, right? And it's supposed to get better
Mhm.
every generation. So I'm just looking to do my part, and we're looking to do our part when it comes down to these athletes. So yeah, no, they're gonna get it the way they need to get it, and it's gonna be from a place of love. It's gonna be a place of accountability,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and it's gonna be something that I can't ask anybody to do anything that I haven't done. So
Yeah.
You're literally changing the game. I love it. Just
absolutely,
But I
100%.
think change only happens like that. I don't think it's decreed. I don't think you can go and say like, okay, now, something is supposed to, it's like one person at a time. And then everybody else looks at them and says, wow, I really like this. I should be
Yeah,
doing the same thing.
yeah,
Right.
lead
And
by
that's
example.
exactly how it happens. And
Mhm.
then it's like maybe it's slow at the beginning and then it's like massive. I think it just goes exponential. That's what I've seen in life.
absolutely.
So I'm hoping it's the same thing here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it will be.
That'd be
It will
cool.
be.
Yeah.
Well, talking kind of about being a leader and a mentor to everyone, looking back, you've been through it all and you're giving now so generously from your experience, it's probably a lot of advice you have to give, but, if you had to pick one piece of advice you wish you had known at the start of your career, what would that be? Tough question. I'm sure there's a lot of answers.
Oh man, it really is. But um, I would say that I wish I would have known a lot earlier. Like when I was young, I could do a lot of different things, and I didn't know why.
Mm,
I didn't know why until these moments.
yeah.
Uh, and now I can apply it to everything that I'm doing. The rooms that I'm in now, to being able to relate to somebody on the corner, being able to talk to an athlete right now and help mentor them. Um, I would say, that finding your purpose as
Mhm.
as quickly as you possibly can in life will help you. Because I think a lot of people, they set sail and not know where they're going, and they allow the wind to blow them in
Mm,
any direction, and then that's a lot of wasted motion. So finding your purpose and
Yeah.
being able to apply everything that you do toward that purpose,
mm,
it'll wake you up in the morning without an alarm clock, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the dynamic of where we are. Like I say, with what we're looking at with the ownership aspect of what we're doing, there's so many different things that can be done, and it starts at the top. It doesn't start with the coach that you bring in or players that you draft every year. Your ownership has to be that, and the people have to buy in. And if they're not able to buy in, you're just, you're using band-aids when it needs to be repaired across the board. So yeah, I would say that purpose, and it's purpose driven over here.
I love that. Amazing. Julia, same question for you. You have just such an amazing.
I think that to me, I've always done stuff that I absolutely loved or I just got out, no matter how good the opportunities were. And sometimes I was like, I can't believe that I'm getting out of this. You know,
Mm,
what I mean? Like people will kill for this, and I'm getting
Right.
out. What? You
yeah.
know, but like I don't know. I always went based on, you know, do I feel like this is something that like I'm loving this, or like I really like being in partnership with these people, and can have
Yeah.
the bad days from time to time and all that, but it's got to feel like you know it feels amazing, and so um and also I would always like over invest in terms of my effort into learning something.
Right.
And so after I've done that, I'm like, okay, so now I don't want to stop doing this because like I know so much about it. Uh,
Yeah.
and when all of these align, that's it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like something that like I really know
Yeah.
so well, and I know probably more than I should because it's ridiculous at some point. I just
That
stop,
totally
you know?
blew my
And
mind.
you
Your
can't
depth of
stop, right?
knowledge.
Like you want to
Yeah.
be prepared and all that. And then knowing that it's a really cool thing. If we know the cutting edge in all of that, like we know what those things are. We're not just like repeating the same thing over and over again from 20 years ago. We know what's going on, you know, and it's the right people. So it's all three.
Yes.
If one of them is missing, then I know at some point I'm gonna lose the motivation. But if all three are there,
Yeah.
then that's the recipe. You know what I mean? So then it's
Yeah. It's like
yeah,
purpose, the right people and passion. And then it just creates
yeah,
joy. You know, work turns into pleasure and yeah,
yeah.
that's
And then it gets getting better
purpose.
and better. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't have to sit there and be like, oh my God, I missed my chance when I was 25. And
Right.
not like, oh my God, like I'm working with people, they're you know, seasoned, they know what's going on, and it's getting better and better for them. So also maintaining that optimism in, you know, that things are getting better for like us specifically.
Yeah.
We didn't miss
Absolutely.
out on anything.
Yeah. Well, and the world just keeps changing and evolving. And, you know, if we just can never stop learning, be students of the universe. And that's, you know, that's the key. And that's especially in this fast-paced world. And when you think about technology, you know, you've just got to always be full of passion, purpose, and want to keep learning.
All right.
Yeah. Um, let's see, I will open this up. If anyone has questions they would like to ask of Julia or Garrick, you know, I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. Feel free to drop those in. A lot of people have expressed their gratitude and just really enjoyed today's conversation. So I'll make sure you can see those messages after.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. If there aren't any further questions, let's see. Let's make sure. Sometimes people do in the chat. Yeah. No, we'll be sure to follow up. I know a lot of people have shared insights and the people want to connect with you. So I'll make sure that those messages get where they need to. I can't thank both of you and the entire audience. You know, time is one of our greatest assets, and the fact that you've shared it with us today. And this was such an incredibly meaningful conversation, and the work that both of you are doing to be guides and to change the narrative. It's very admirable. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having us. Thank everybody for jumping in. Yeah, you're right. You know, time is something that we don't have much of. So, you know, we tend to try not to waste it. I promise you that.
There we go. Awesome. Well,
Thank you
I
to
look
all
forward.
participants. And Danielle, thank you so much
Yeah.
for running your master classes. You've really built it out to such an incredible program.
Thank you.
And I know how hard you work behind the scenes. Like
Mhm.
all of this is, you know, you have kids, you have family, you have a thriving business that's awesome.
Oh, thank
And
you.
just the fact of how much you support everyone in this ecosystem and community. Um, and the fact that you've really taken this from zero to like just really
Oh,
an amazing program. So congratulations on that and
thank
well
you,
done, my friend.
Julia. I mean, I love learning, and so does everyone, judging by the volume of participants. So it's just amazing
Mhm.
that we can do this collectively. And I think the more we can work together, the more we can kind of elevate. So thank you. That's a great
Then
note
yeah,
to end on. Yes, Garrick.
I think you got a couple of questions, Q&As. It's a bunch of them popped up. I don't.
Oh, whoa. Maybe I wasn't scrolling. Hope those weren't there the whole time.
Right,
All
right,
right. Well,
absolutely.
you know, we got 5 minutes. So here
Let's
we're
do
saying
it. Let's
five,
try to
but
get as much.
yeah, you know, you're here. Following up on the trend of investing in team ownership, what is the sentiment around women's sports and the growth that offers compared to men's sport? Yeah, Yasser, that's a great question.
That's a great question. So with that, um, my group and I are part of an expansion bid for a WNBA team in Nashville, Tennessee. And what that means is there's an uptick in women's
Mhm.
sports that definitely will be a wave. We not only want to ride the wave, but we want to add water to the wave. And that's through sports and entertainment districts,
Mhm.
symbiotic relationships with other teams that we would own inside of those districts, where now you can cross-pollinate the fans and those fan bases, but also offering a number of ancillary revenue generators to the table to help the women athletes get to a point to where they're going through exactly what we're talking about right now and being in a position to be and have generational wealth just from
Yeah.
their sport alone. We want them to have ownership in businesses, franchises, all these different things inside of the district. And we want the league to thrive. And that goes into other women led leagues. Hence, part of the reason why I'm dealing with Family Office Alpha, right? We are really not only talking the talk, but we're walking the walk. One of our main architecture firms is 100% women led. So we want to bring all these different things to the table that adds to what's going on in women's sports, while it's growing on its own, resting on those laurels. It's past time, and we just want to be a conduit and a catalyst to just that type of growth, where these athletes now are in positions to take care of their families from the grave.
Mhm.
So yeah, so we're putting it all together when it comes down to that. But yeah, it's time.
Amazing. Wow. And this kind of, talking about this impact that you're making and you're helping these athletes make. So what is the opinion of athletes in respect to social impact along with financial returns? I know there's a big movement to
Um, I
investing.
mean, a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, right?
Hmm.
Because of the blinders being on, and this is how I'm going to help my family, and that's
Right.
that's associated with just the X's and O's. But a lot of times, X's and O's outside of the game don't equate to good business.
Hmm.
So that's where we come in to be a solution for, a lot of these athletes that don't really understand the dynamic of what they really have their hands on. Right
Right.
now, the ones that are active, their wherewithal and their bandwidth is okay, I'm a ball player, and that's all they know. But once they get an opportunity to be exposed to and then educated on, that whole dynamic changes. So this is where we come in with the mentor-mentee relationships, the other programs that I have set up, the alliance, the memberships, all these different things that we're doing within the Ownership Reimagined movement now gets them to a point where they have a true succession plan to ownership, to expansion in other countries. Really looking at the 40 to 50,000 foot view on life
Yeah.
at that particular point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Amazing. Hard to see that big picture without that guidance, that
Oh
expertise.
yeah, it
Awesome.
is. It is.
Well, we've got time for one more. Adam asks, he came from a military background of 12 years, British Army. Although I'm not an investor, I'm a building entrepreneur. What is your advice when you know that what you and your team are creating is going to compete with the likes of LinkedIn and many of the other job boards that are out there globally with something that's new and really truly works? So I guess advice for a
Oh
thriving,
yeah, yeah.
an
Now
ambitious entrepreneur.
it goes back to everybody has a first day of school.
There
LinkedIn
you
did too.
go. Yeah.
Google had one, Yahoo had one, everybody had one. So your advantage is your military background. You know how to take yourselves to the points of no return when it comes down to training, having a mental mindset. And a lot of those people who started LinkedIn and Google and everything else, they didn't necessarily have that, right?
Yeah.
So that's to your advantage to be able to tap into that. It's kind of like my son, he went from playing football and being one of the best athletes I've ever seen. He said he wanted to be in band. And I was like, I love it. Right. So now he's a drum major and he has around 600 kids under him. Right. I said, so now what you do is you take what you learn in football to instill that type of responsibility, accountability in people that are under you. And when
Mhm.
he figured it out and said, you know what, I can do that. Now it changed the game, right? Because at first that was just too big for him. I was like,
Yeah.
nah, you already know how to do it. So from
Wow.
that military background, it helps. Um,
Mhm.
so they left the blueprint. Just take
Take
it
that
and
mindset and
yeah,
apply it
take
to
it.
what you need. I love that. Wow.
Absolutely.
Well, I see it as 2 o'clock. So we will do our true goodbyes now. But thank you. Thank you everyone again for joining us. This has been awesome. We'll send the recording out tomorrow along with information where you can follow and connect with Garrick and Julia. Thanks everyone.
Thank you
Enjoy the
guys.
rest of your
All right,
day.
guys. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.